Good Wednesday evening, everybody, and Happy New Year. This is going to be my first official long video of the new year. Recently, I put out a little short telling you what I wanted to read this month. So that was my first official video of the new year. But this is going to be my second. So this is my long-awaited video reflecting on the movies I watched in December. So, didn't realize that I watched as many as I did in December. So, I have rewatches. Of course, I have new releases. And these are all sorts of different genres. So, without further ado, let's kick this thing off with the first movie I watched. And I actually rewatched this movie on the day that it actually came out back in 2022. I rewatched Violent Night, and this was the third time I saw this movie. I saw it twice in theaters, so this is basically Die Hard meets the Santa Claus. David Harbour plays Santa Claus, and he's just doing his thing, but it comes across like this family that owns their mansion, but they have like a group of, I guess you want to say, safe robbers in a way. Well, it turns into like, I don't want to say a cheap knockoff of Die Hard, because I actually really do enjoy this movie quite a bit. But that's exactly what it is. It's Santa Claus, but he's John McClane. I love this movie, and it's probably going to be in the rotation for every other Christmas. But that was Violent Night. And not to mention, you get a pretty good villain in John Leguizamo. Next one I watched was The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And I was pretty skeptical with this. That's why it took me to December to actually watch it. But I finally checked this thing out, and it was fine. It's a prequel before The Hunger Games, and it focuses on Coriolanus Snow, which would be your president of Panem and your main villain of The Hunger Games. So this focused on his mentorship towards Lucy Gray Baird. And this movie was like set up in a weird structure. It had like 3 parts, and easily the best part of this movie was the Hunger Games part. But you had to watch part 1 to get to part 2, which is the best part of this movie. And I felt that the third part kind of fell apart for me, because it literally set him up to be more evil. And he started off being kind of normal. And the ending kind of felt very lackluster, in my opinion. Now, I didn't hate this movie, but I'm more of a casual fan of The Hunger Games, so this piqued my curiosity, and I just thought it was fine at best. So that was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Moving on to another Christmas horror. Well, I don't know why they call it Violent Night Christmas horror. It's more Christmas action, but this one is Christmas horror. Krampus. And this released back in 2015. This is just basically if Christmas Vacation was a horror movie, but you add Krampus into the mix. So it's just about like this family who invite their in-laws over for Christmas, and these in-laws are horrible people. But you have people like Adam Scott, Toni Collette, man, you got Conchata Farrell, R.I.P., by the way, and David Koechner. David Koechner made this movie so much fun. But basically, Krampus is like an anti-Santa Claus. So, the main kid in here, he still believes in Santa Claus, but his family just don't appreciate that, I guess. So he tore up his letter to Santa, and it ended up in Krampus's possession. So Krampus takes his family and him with him. But this has a very dark twist. This movie is like almost 10 years old, but I'll just go ahead and give it away. His whole family ends up in a snow globe. So, it's a PG-13 horror comedy, but there are some pretty creepy scenes in here. My favorite is probably like the Christmas cookie fight. It's very campy, but it's very fun as well. And the Jack-in-the-Box snake thing is pretty terrifying too. I know a lot of people are mixed on this movie, but I have a lot of fun with it. That was Krampus. Moving right along, and I almost didn't want to put this movie on this month's list, but I did a rewatch of Thanksgiving. So I talked about this movie like ad nauseum since November. Eli Roth's new slasher that was 16 years in the making, and you have like a new iconic slasher villain called John Carver, which is just like this crazy pilgrim. And the twist is so blatantly obvious that I'm not going to get into that. But basically, it starts off where a Black Friday massacre happens and our killer seeks revenge the year after. This movie is pretty fun to watch, but I did have some trouble with like the dialogue and the character work. But John Carver is definitely a new horror icon. And not to mention, we are getting a Thanksgiving 2 next year. So, definitely can't wait. But that was Thanksgiving. Next up is one that I almost forgot that I even watched in December. But it's the first new release I watched. Silent Night. Not to be confused with Violent Night. This is a completely different movie. But this is about a man who recently lost his son in a gang shooting. And what's very interesting about him, completely silent, because the main gang leader shot him in the throat and he can't even scream or talk. So this is John Woo's new Christmas action thriller, and I was kind of disappointed with this one because I knew that there was a better movie here. But to make the decision to have like no dialogue is just baffling to me. But I do like the climax quite a bit. But that's about it. This movie was just very disappointing. But that was Silent Night. Speaking of a movie that shouldn't even exist, It's a Wonderful Knife. And this is It's a Wonderful Life, but put a slasher towards the story. And this is a Shudder original movie. Yes, I do watch Shudder here and there. But I was morbidly curious about this one. But it's basically about this girl who kills the angel killer in the very beginning. And we know the identity right off the bat. It's Justin Long. So she goes out to like the dock, and you know the whole story of like It's a Wonderful Life. She wishes that she was never born, and she goes to like an alternate timeline where her dad is the killer, and her dad is Joel McHale. So it was a weird movie, but I don't even remember it. So it was fine, but I'll probably never rewatch it. But that was It's a Wonderful Knife. Followed by a movie that I really wanted to watch last Christmas. So that would have been back in like 2022. Well, 2023, I finally watched Black Christmas 2006. And this was a direct remake of the original. But in my opinion, and don't shame me, I thought this was better than the original. I know that's a very hot take, but I found Black Christmas 1974 to be kinda but I actually did like this one quite a bit. So it's basically When a Stranger Calls, but with a Christmas twist. And it's just about like this group of sorority girls who stay on campus during the holidays, and they are hunted by this man named Billy. And he grew up in that house, and he's back for revenge. But in this one, his daughter, which he had sex with his mom, so that would make his daughter his sister, which is so weird. Well, they are the two killers. I really did enjoy this one. It's very different, but I would highly, and this is just my opinion, this is my favorite Black Christmas movie. But this whole franchise, I believe, just isn't for me. So, yeah. I do want to check out the fan film, It's Me, Billy. And that's on YouTube right now. But later on in the year, they actually got a follow-up coming out. So, I definitely do want to check those two out. But we're talking like months ahead. So, that's just my opinion. That was Black Christmas 2006. Followed by probably one of the biggest surprises of the month, but not my favorite movie of the month. This next movie is Wonka. And this stars Timothée Chalamet as a young Willy Wonka. And this movie was, I put it out there, delightful. And it just like explores a younger Willy Wonka starting off his own factory and becoming the Willy Wonka we know and love. So, I really did enjoy Timothée Chalamet in this one, but the villains are stock Disney-fied baddies. So, they're kind of generic and kind of forgettable, but this movie just oozes charm. So that was Wonka. Now, I enjoyed that movie so much that I decided to re-watch the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And this was one of my favorite movies growing up. And this stars Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka. Easily the best Willy Wonka by far. So, this is about a contest determining who wants to inherit Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. So Willy Wonka decides to put 5 golden tickets in Wonka bars, and whoever is selected gets to tour the factory. But Willy Wonka is so oblivious that 4 of the 5 children disappear or die, leaving Charlie Buckets to be the sole inheritor of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Now, in my review, I said that this movie is kind of like a slasher, and it's pretty apparent that it is, but it's so whimsical and goofy that you kind of like ignore that aspect and you just embrace the childhood whimsiness. So, I really do enjoy this movie quite a bit, and I'm glad I rewatched it. That was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Followed by an early screening of The Boys in the Boat, and I saw this the Sunday before Christmas because it was originally slated for a Christmas release. And this is just like a Depression era sports drama. And this is about like the Washington Huskies JV rowing team. And they have the opportunity to compete in the 1936 Berlin Summer Olympics. So, I really did enjoy this movie, but it's very similar to movies like Hoosiers Race, and Rudy. Because all those movies took place in the 30s and 40s, if I'm not mistaken. And this was just one of them. But I really did enjoy the story. It was a very different sport to understand, but it's a movie that I've seen thousands of times. But I gave it a positive review. I didn't hate it, but I thought it was fine. But that was The Boys in the Boat. Followed by Wayne's World, party time, excellent. I had to. So, for some reason, I did a double feature of Wayne's World 1 and 2. So, Wayne's World stars Mike Myers and Dana Carvey, and this originally started off as like a Saturday Night Live sketch, and the first one just makes them a little bit more famous in a way, because they have like their own show in their basement, and they're on public access, so Rob Lowe comes in and offers them a lot of money to become more national, but they don't like that whatsoever. But Mike Myers meets Cassandra, played by Tia Carrere, and I enjoy the hell out of these movies. They're silly, but they are 90s staples. And not to mention, you get a cameo of Alice Cooper. Best part of the movie. So, yeah. That's Wayne's World. Wayne's World 2 just reunites Wayne and Garth, and they are told to like put on like Wayne stock, which is their vision of Woodstock. So Wayne just starts having like visions of a naked Indian and Jim Morrison telling him to put on this concert, and he's afraid that like none of the bands will show up, because he starts naming off like Pearl Jam, Van Halen, Aerosmith, and whoever back in the 90s. So this movie just embraces the 90s. Ton of references. I mean, in the first one, there's like a reference to Terminator 2 with Robert Patrick coming in, and the way that movie ends, I forgot to mention. No, it is this one. Yeah, it is this one. But this movie ends the same way as The Graduate, where Dustin Hoffman takes the girl of his dreams, and the girl of his dreams was about ready to get married, but he came in and saved the day, and now they start their life together. So, yeah. I really do enjoy these movies quite a bit, and you also get a cameo appearance of Aerosmith in this one. So these two are 90s staples. Moving on, I have Aquaman. And this was the second time I ever watched it since theaters. You'll see why I rewatched this here in a minute, but that stars Jason Momoa as Arthur Curry slash Aquaman, and this tells him how, or I mean, this tells us how he grew up, and he uh, is in the possession of becoming the king of Atlantis. But the only way for that to happen is for him to defeat Orm, which is his half brother, played by Patrick Wilson. I really do enjoy this movie, but I don't see myself rewatching it very often because unfortunately it does go into that realm where we've seen it before. And this movie made like over $1 billion because it came out at the right time with Endgame and Infinity War. So, of course, that was like the prime time for any superhero movie to like succeed. But looking back on the year, we only had like 2 very successful superhero movies. The rest bombed drastically. But yeah, not to mention you also get glimpses of Black Manta in here, but I will get into him when I get into the second one. But I just found that this one was just fine. But that was Aquaman. So moving right along to Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and pretty much the same thing, but Black Manta is more fleshed out in here, but he's kind of wasted in my opinion. Now if you're talking about wasted, Amber Heard, she's barely in this movie. For one reason, the whole Depp versus Heard trial. This movie like sank, and I'm not saying that in a pun because it really did sink at the box office. But I do like the camaraderie between Aquaman and Orm a little bit better in here. I actually prefer that to Aquaman and Mera in the first one. But this movie kind of goes off the rails. It's too silly, and it goes into like global warming. And Black Manta is basically, oh, I look angry all the time. And he just like wants revenge on Aquaman because he killed his father. Very forgettable villain, in my opinion. But I thought that this movie was alright. It wasn't my least favorite superhero movie of the year, but it's a little bit higher. Not as high as you would think, but it was just fine. But that was Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Okay, we got 4 more movies here. And next one I watched was Deck the Halls. Yeah, that one. No, I watched this the day before Christmas Eve. Yeah, that's right. But this stars Matthew Broderick and Danny DeVito. And it's just like a Christmas comedy. It's basically about like these dueling neighbors who can't stand each other. And Danny DeVito wants to decorate his house with lights, and his ultimate goal is to have his house seen from space. It's like the dumbest premise I've ever heard. But this isn't the worst Christmas movie I've seen, but it ain't my favorite. I've seen it quite a few times. It's fine, but it's just like your PG comedy slapstick movie. But every time I watch it, I forget about it instantly. And Matthew Broderick is just kind of bland. So, that was Deck the Halls. Moving on to, by far, my favorite movie of the month, The Iron Claw. And this is based on the true story of the Von Erich family. And they were wrestlers in the 70s and 80s in Texas. And their story is just filled with tragedy because all but one son passed away. They had Fritz Von Erich had like 5 kids, and all but one, Kevin, survived. The youngest son died at a very young age. The first son died in Tokyo because of like a ruptured intestine. The other son had like a shoulder injury and his brain wasn't right, so he committed suicide. The other son had a motorcycle accident and he committed suicide. It was just a rough movie. And it's easily one of the best movies of the year. It actually made number 5 on my list. So, if you want my full thoughts, I have a review on that movie. And I do go into it a little bit with my review as well. So, check that out if you're interested. But moving on to Tamra. And I watched this on Fawsome Horror. Just kind of like a cheap knockoff of Tubi. And I saw this movie one other time. This is basically Carrie, but you make her a witch. So it's about like this shy girl who has like a crush on her teacher, and her classmates don't like that whatsoever, so they bully her and they trick her into meeting him in a hotel room. Well, things don't go good at all because they kill her, but Tamra put on like a love curse of some kind, and she was automatically brought back from the dead. So she gets revenge on all of her classmates who bullied her, and there are some very creative deaths in here. It gets very gory, but it has that 2000s cheesiness to it. But I really did enjoy this movie, and yeah, that was Tamara. And the final movie to close out last year, I rewatched Cocaine Bear. So, did a whole review on this back in February of last year. And this is based on the true story that happened in the 80s where a pilot threw out tons of cocaine out of the plane and it ended up in a national forest and a bear got into it and he went on a murderous rampage. So that's this movie, and it's a lot of fun. But I wanted a little bit more bear action. This one, unfortunately, focused more on the human characters. But it's still an overall fun movie. And those are the 18 movies I watched in December. So, hope you guys enjoyed. I'm going to have like a couple more videos that I want to film tomorrow. And I'm going to finally go see the first movie that comes out this year on Friday called Night Swim. So, Megan was a huge surprise last January. Let's hope Night Swim is a huge surprise. So, I'll have my thoughts on that movie coming out by the weekend, so stay tuned for that. But otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. And I'm probably going to have like a couple of bookish videos coming up next because I got some Stephen King content coming up as well. Got to do like a Drawing of the Three review, a Stephen King TBR part 3. I'll get into that shtick when I get into that video. And I'll also rank the 16 Stephen King books that I read in the past couple of years. So, hoping to give some of that to you guys like as soon as tomorrow. But otherwise, that's all I got for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Adios. Peace.